Welcome. Regular fans of the channel all know what I love to do. I love to experiment and wire trees, get creative, and today I've got a bit of an old hawthorn that I want to do some designing on. So let's get stuck in. Now then, when I say old, I don't mean old, I mean knackered. I think it was part of some kind of forest I was creating last year. I ended up bending this down into this shape, which is quite nice. I tore all this top section. I'll give you a look. My question now is, what do I do with this tree? This is quite nice, I like it. It's got obviously the branches up here, which will definitely be staying. Might get rid of one of these. I was thinking some kind of cascade style, but this is all far too long. And this is just dead straight from here all the way to here. So my plan is to add some wire and just make this more interesting. I've got a nice piece of wire here. I think this is 6mm thick. I'm obviously reusing an old piece. I don't want to do anything on this section, so it's really this section here where I want to kind of apply some real movement. So I will start further back, and I'm working in an opposite direction to the direction that the wire was applied last time. So if there's any scarring, this should kind of allow the tree to be as healthy as possible by going in the opposite direction. So I'm just wrapping this wire around. Just trying to be as careful as possible, and I'm not too bothered if the coil isn't super tight. This is thick stuff, so it'll hold even if it's not applied perfectly. And in many ways, that's actually better, because it'll be less likely to scar. So I've applied that piece, which is the main holding wire, but I will also add a second piece of wire. This is where the main bend's going to happen. So along this section, what I want to do is just apply a second piece of thinner wire in the middle, and this is there to support the bark and stop the tree from kind of tearing as I bend. So that was a fairly quick process. Now I need to decide what to do with this, so I think I'll show you from the end-on view. From here we can see how very straight this tree is. Obviously it's coming up and then down. So what I'm thinking is, I could just turn this down into a classic cascade, but I've got a really nice cascade, so I think this could be quite interesting by taking it up in that direction. Now I'm really supporting this bend with my hand. There. I'm prepared to go a little further. Like that. So that's becoming quite interesting. Let's just go around a little more. And that's certainly developing some character. I'm just having a look there. I think it's cracked a little bit there on the underneath. But as I say, with a hawthorn, I'll just take it back just a touch, but with a hawthorn, you can crack the trunk and be fine. So, yeah, that's getting there now. I quite like that. I think I will bring this further back. Oh, did you hear that? Now this is going to be interesting. You heard that crack there. That really was quite a severe crack. So I'll just push it back on itself just a touch. And let's see if that heals and repairs itself. I'm really interested to see whether that can survive that kind of abuse. You know, it's had a little crack here, it's had a major crack there. Let's have a closer look. I'm really hoping that my microphone picked up the crack, because it really went. You like those sound effects? And you can see it in there where it's properly snapped. So it'll be interesting. I won't do any more to this tree now, because I do want to leave it as an experiment, just to show you how they can heal. We've got some real shape happening with this tree now. It's a bit weird, a bit funky. It does need cutting back at some point. I won't cut anything off it now, because I want the sap to flow to heal these cracks if they heal. But let's move on to another project. What we have here is a twin trunk cascading oak. There's probably a good reason that I've never seen a twin trunk cascading oak. And it's probably because they don't exist in nature and they just look weird. So there is, you know, maybe it's a crazy idea, but this tree was growing naturally with this really weird twin trunk with a strange bend in my sister's garden. I dug it up last year and I thought, let's try and use that bend to create something interesting. And so I just put it in this pot. I exaggerated the bend with the use of this aluminium wire, which I'm just now removing. And so this is the direction it went in. So I just don't know whether this is going to be a ridiculous tree. You know, because some people might have heard me talking in the past about how I like natural trees, natural looking trees based on sort of the real world. And I do. But what I'm beginning to realise is I also like weird stuff that's quite out there, and in many ways is moving away from that the sort of naturalistic style. And this is more in the world of, in my mind anyway, this is more like a sort of creative art. You're not really producing something that exists in nature, although I don't know. There'll probably be a few people watching this video. Have any of you ever seen an oak tree in the wild that cascades? Let me know if you have. Or have you got cascading oak bonsais yourself, or have you seen them? Is this something, I've never seen them, but then my knowledge of sort of trees, of bonsai, the bonsai world, is certainly not the best. Now I've got this thick wire here. I'll give you a closer view of this. In many ways this is the critical piece of wire, because this was the one that was doing the most. Obviously this is the thickest, so this is doing the most bending of any. And this is, I think this is beginning to cut in a little bit as well, which is why I wanted to get this off today before it does too much damage. It's bruised the bark a little bit, but that's nothing too serious to me, that. Come on, Tony, get them pliers in action. Yeah, so there is some marking on it, but I've said in the past, certain trees I don't mind when the bark gets a bit scarred, because hopefully in the end they're going to have a textured craggy bark and that won't be visible. So things like oak, hawthorn, I'm not really as bothered about them as I am, for example, apparently on a maple it can be there almost for life if you scar it. So you've got to be really careful with some types of tree. That's off. From this side you can see there are a couple of suckers. In fact, there's quite a lot of small suckers appearing down here, which I will leave to grow as kind of sacrificial branches to try and thicken up this base. And then these two have really held on to that form now, because they were already partially there, as I said before. And now viewed from this side, I don't know, am I being mad? I'll just take that little branch off there, I don't like that. Am I being crazy with this? Is that just too weird? I don't know. What do you think? I think I'm just going to leave this and let this grow and see what it turns into. I really like this kind of double sort of, it's not a literati, but it's almost, who knows? I don't know. How do you define that as a tree? But I think it's quite interesting. I thought I'd show you. Next up, we've got a hawthorn. I've worked on this tree in the past and I really like this one actually. Let's take a closer look at the stumpy base. Since I last did any work on this tree, it's sent out quite a few new branches, which is great. Initially there were just 3, so I had this one here, and the thickest one at the back that I'm trying to develop into the new leader. What I'm conscious of is kind of not having these branches too big, so I'm going to prune some of these back. First up, I've got a branch that's basically coming from pretty much inside this, and I think this will be a good place to get rid of this whole branch there, and this can become the new branch. Thinner, more delicate. I can put some movement into it with wire, which I will do in a bit. Similarly, this other branch has also got a lovely low branch coming off it, and this is a great way to develop taper within the actual branches, because taper shouldn't just be for the trunk. You know, good branches should also taper, and that's now going from thick to thin, and in time I think that'll look great. Now those other branches have gone, we can clearly see that this is hopefully going to develop into the new main leader, which is thickening up a little bit, which is good. And obviously I'll just leave that, I won't cut that at all. These leaves and branches around the front are all suckers coming from just below the soil line. Now, although these won't be in the final design of this tree, I am going to leave them on just to add to the health, because I've removed so much foliage in those 2 branches that I've just removed. These will just help add some extra energy to the tree over the next few months. So if I take these suckers out of the equation, it just leaves these 3 branches now. One new one coming from the side of the tree, which is in a good position, and one each from these stumps that I've just cut. And what I'm going to do is no, you know what? I'm not even going to add any wire to these, because I don't want to risk damaging these branches, because they're so delicate and they're so important now to the health of this tree. I'm just going to leave them to grow for a few months. We've got a nice wide shot here, so I can show you the extent to which I'm allowing this tree to grow. But this thicker branch, obviously, in time will be chopped right back down to somewhere around here. But I don't anticipate that being cut for probably at least a couple of years, because I just want that to thicken up. So that's been an interesting few trees. 2 hawthorns and an oak. It sounds a bit like a Richard Curtis film, doesn't it? For Richard Curtis meets Alan Titchmarsh. But I hope you've enjoyed seeing me working on these trees. If you'd like to see how these develop in the future, hit subscribe, follow my channel, and as always, thanks for joining me. I look forward to seeing you soon.